What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The Celestial Compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Beal. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Beal.
Greetings, Earthlings. This is Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net. Welcome to Celestial Compass. We're going to be talking about what has led to 2022 and where we might be going from it. But first, before I introduce our very special guest, I'm going to update the forecast just a bit. You can find the full forecast at my site, empowermentunlimited.net, and also at omtimes.com. October has two big events coming that are launching processes that will be with us for months. The first, which you're probably already feeling, is the new moon at the very beginning of Scorpio on October 25th. This is a solar eclipse. It is super powered in setting the reset button on things that that deal with things we don't talk about in public much. Our shared resources, what we value. It's kind of a Gollum, my precious moment for many people, but it's giving us a massive upgrade because Venus is in the picture, a massive upgrade in relationships, and it will actually be clearing a lot out, even though it's a new moon, because eclipses always have the sky going dark, even if for just a brief moment, and something is eclipsed out. The companion eclipse for this will happen in November, the Taurus full moon, which will close many a chapter and have lots and lots of revelations. Uranus is in the mix for that. We'll talk about that more next month. But this month, the other big event to watch for is Mars turning retrograde on October 30th. Mars is the cosmic first responder. He's our own superhero. It's how we use our energy. He's the god of war, the masculine impulse. When he goes retrograde, things get very interesting because Mars likes to go forward. Retrogrades take us back over old territory, and he is retrograde in the sign of Gemini, which means this is going to feel a lot like a Mercury retrograde in many ways, because there'll be this backing over, things having to do in some regard with information. Mars is retrograde until January 12th for a very long time. And again, this process only starts around Halloween. And I have a lot more about this in the forecast for the month of October, which again is at Om Times and my site, empowermentunlimited.net, and also in the forecast for the Scorpio new moon solar eclipse, which you can find at both of those sites. And enough about that. We have with us the wonderful and delightful Susan Miller. I am so pleased that you're back. Susan is an internationally known astrologer, author, columnist, and TV personality with a great laugh. She is the go-to astrologer with her detailed and highly accurate predictions appearing on Good Morning America, The View, Access Hollywood. I could go on for the next 5 minutes on this. We'll just jump. She's a monthly contributing editor over 9 international magazines, including Vogue Japan, Vogue China, Vogue Germany, and Amica, Italy, as well as the author of 10 best-selling books and calendars. She offers a popular smartphone app, the daily Horoscope Astrology Zone and More by Susan Miller, and her monthly horoscopes. Yeah.
We made it
And
shorter.
oh, you changed the name. Nobody told me. What's it called now?
Well, it's so new. Astrology Zone Horoscopes. That's just it. And
Much
and I have a
and
new baby. I have a new app too. Another one that adds to it. It shows you when the moon is void of course, called Moonlight Phases. If you just put in Susan Miller, both of them come up on Apple or Google. So it's
And you also have a book, The Year 2022, a new 200-year cycle that will rapidly shift life as we know it. And that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, well, when I wrote that book, I thought I should give a chapter that's really special, 10,000 words. It's the first chapter in the book. I didn't know that when you buy a Kindle book, it flies through the air and shows up in your Kindle 3 seconds later. I mean, how do they do that? But it knows your Kindle, and you don't. And Apple does too, if you get it on your phone or your iPad at Apple. So yeah, and I also am on BookBaby. Has nothing to do with babies. It's just bookbaby.com. You can even get a PDF. You don't have to buy a device. But the meeting of Jupiter and Saturn is so critical. It happens every 20 years. And they only meet once, and it changes things in society and in your life, too. Yeah.
So to put this in perspective for people, this actually happened a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
so
but
today
we're starting
has
to
its
feel it. Yeah, we're starting.
Today has its roots in 2020.
Yes, it's December 21st. 2020. It was at the wee end of the year. It was practically New Year's Eve. It was 10 days before New Year's Eve. And these two planets are in the middle. They're like the Goldilocks. They're not the fast-moving planets like Mars and Mercury and Venus. And we feel their retrogrades very strongly because they're so close to Earth. They're not the slow-moving planets like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. They're right in the middle. So they really affect us in a reasonable amount of time. But what makes this so earth-shattering, and astrologers have been waiting for this event, over the course of the last 200 years, Jupiter and Saturn always met in Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, the earth signs. And earth signs are materialistic. You can feel and touch. You know, it's a shopping sign. And what did we have? Those signs are all three are shopping signs. We wrote. Of course, we built cathedrals and skyscrapers, but we also did roads, bridges, tunnels, railroad tracks. But we started the Industrial Revolution and consumerism. And it's hard to imagine, only 200 years ago, when you wanted cereal, you didn't go to a supermarket. You went to a general store, and the man said, gee, I hope the barrel of oatmeal came in. Oh, yes, here it is. And he put his scoop in and put it in a little paper bag. And that was your oatmeal. You didn't get to choose what we have now. And if you wanted a new dress or a new suit, he would show you the fabric. You'd either bring it to a tailor or make it yourself. You know, the men probably went to a tailor, but some of the women were quite handy. But that was life. But now, there was one aberration, and I'll get to that in a minute. That happened in 1980. But whenever the universe is going to do something massive, it gives you a little, like a periscope, a little peek at what's coming. But they met in Aquarius. And from now on, they will never meet again in Earth signs in our lifetime. They're going to meet in Aquarius, Libra, Gemini. Over and over. They never step on each other's toes. They never try to run ahead of each other. They're very mathematical. And they met in Aquarius. And it just so happened that we had the pandemic at the time, 2020, when they were meeting. And what were we talking about? What were we doing? We were home. We were on Zoom. You know, Aquarius is digital. It's an air sign. And so we're moving away from, I have a nicer house than you have, I have a bigger car than you have. That's not going to matter as much. It's what you contribute, what you've learned, where you've traveled, how you communicate, really. That's air. Air loves to debate. You meet a Gemini, they say, oh, let's talk about something. Or a Libra, rules the courts. They love to debate fairness in court. And then, you know, you just, Aquarius, of course, loves to debate science and space. You're going to see such radical change in terms of our exploration of the world around us, and I think it will include the oceans of the world. But in this bonus chapter that I put up front, which I think is worth the $8, is that it's all about what's coming, all the inventions they're working on now, and things we can't even imagine, because you know we couldn't have imagined the iPhone, but even more exciting things also are coming, just as exciting, I should say. And you know, the flying taxis, the driverless cars, that's easy because we're reading about it, but there's much, much more in every field, and they'll be able to get into your DNA and take out you know, diseases that you've inherited that make people suffer, you know, if they inherited it. So, you know, some people have a lifetime curse, so to speak, because they inherited this one bad gene, and they're going to find out how to do it. You know, we have CRISPR now, and we also have IBM's Watson. You know, they were using Watson a lot. You know, when they had to develop those vaccines, usually when you're going to develop a vaccine, you need money first, okay? And that usually takes all the time. But they didn't have to go through that whole process because the government gave them all the money they needed. So, okay, so now that they're on stage 2, we can start. And they were working in teams, and that's very Aquarius. Like maybe somebody, a researcher, a scientist in New Jersey, was working on part of the vaccine. And then he was about to get into the next phase when something popped up on Watson and said, oh, this scientist in Denmark has already done research that I was going to just get started on. Wait a minute, let me give this chap a call, and maybe we could work together. And that's how we developed the vaccine so much quicker. We were using communication tools of technology. And the CEO of Pfizer said something so Aquarian. Look what can be achieved when no one cares who gets the credit. You know, so
that's
I'm excited about
is.
what's coming. You know, and the environment will be very much part of this, and we are going to double down and take care of precious Earth and the species and the animals and you know all the things that we love so much about being alive. We will address it. Yeah, because that's very Aquarius.
Now, you mentioned in this mega chapter a conversation that you had with some friends.
2 friends at dinner.
Talking in advance, and you at that point foresaw an impact, especially on 2 large problems: healthcare system and the digital divide.
Yes, it's not fair that some people have access to computers and Wi-Fi and other people don't. I know Google's been working on this, even with hot air balloons and trying all kinds of things to get Wi-Fi into parts of countries, you know, neighborhoods, so to speak, that don't have any Wi-Fi in rural areas. You know, I think the whole telephone poles that we're used to seeing along the sides of roads, that's going to go away. I mean, you get one hurricane and they all fall down and nobody has electricity, nobody has telephone service. That has to change, and we know it. There's a lot of infrastructure, but that will evolve and be better. Well, we knew that the meeting of Jupiter and Saturn was a big deal because they only meet once and they pick a place where they're going to have dinner. But here's what's interesting. They say, what should we bring society? Hey, you look good, Saturn. I haven't seen you in 20 years. Oh, you look great, Jupiter. But they were both in Aquarius. But remember I said there was an aberration? There was. In 1980, they met in Libra, and then in 2020, 2000, I'm sorry, the year 2000, all these twos, they met in Taurus, and then now they've come back to air. So I said, why does the universe do this? And it was really bothering me. I kept thinking and thinking. You know, I'm walking up Lexington, Madison Park, you know, in New York here in Manhattan. Why do they do this? And then I hit on an answer that I think is plausible. The baby's born in 1980, and you got to give it a plus or minus 5 years, are grown up now. By the time you're 40, no, they're 42 right now, you've probably either gotten married or bought a house or got a nice job. You may have written a book or, you've done something. Usually, by the time you're 40, you've put a stake in the ground. You're grown up and you're solidifying your life and you're getting to know yourself better. Those babies were born with Jupiter, Saturn, and Libra. They have it in air, in their DNA. They're going to take us by the hand and walk us over the rickety bamboo swaying bridge to the other side of the ravine and tell us it's going to be fine and I'm going to help you get to the new era. They're going to be very important in the coming era that's upon us now, and it's only going to accelerate. If you're in the internet business or science, you know about Moore's law, that every 18 months everything jumps to another level, and that's why it feels so fast. I think it's going even faster than that now. So I think we have a lot of exciting things to look forward to. There are things that we may not like and we have to adjust to. And I find now that people just want to do Zoom and they don't want to meet in person, and I'm missing that. But little by little, people are, venturing out. And I'm getting another shot on Friday. I keep getting everything that's out there, And
well, with that, I'm going to interrupt you for a second for our first break. Everyone hang tight. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking today with Susan Miller about her book, The Year 2022, A New 200-Year Cycle That Will Rapidly Shift Life as We Know It. One thing I was really taken by, a detail in your book, is noticing that the James Webb Telescope was launched days after Jupiter and Saturn had their conjunction, and we are just now, in recent weeks, seeing photographs from that telescope.
We're the first people on Earth to see these planets close up. We tend to get blasé about these things, and I don't. I'm like, 1995, when the Hubble went up, that was the first time we really got to see Saturn and Jupiter and Neptune and all these great planets. But now we're getting so much more detail on them. People who don't believe in astrology, I say, well, that's okay. I don't know any astrologer who ever believed in astrology before she started studying it, or he did. It's very mathematical, and the one thing you learn is that nature doesn't do anything she doesn't have to do. I grew up in hospitals, and for example, I bled internally. I was very, very sick. I've had life-threatening illness from this birth defect. And the doctor said, luckily you're bleeding internally in the hip and the leg. And Mother Nature is capturing all the red blood cells. And she's saying, Susan's going to need this. And it usually takes 8 weeks to make more blood. But when you're bleeding internally, Mother Nature knows you're in trouble, and she harvests them, and you make new blood in 3 weeks. And she's trying to save your life. Mother Nature is conservative. She conserves what she can. And when you realize that she made these planets, God made the planets, whomever made the planets, they were a big deal. They're huge. And they weren't just there to be beautiful. They have a purpose. And when you study astrology, you see that purpose. They systematically give us rewards, but also challenges to toughen us up and help us become more resourceful and imaginative. So everything we go through has a purpose. Or at least that's what I get from astrology. Definitely.
I'm just finding it astonishing that as the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction's potential is starting to bear fruit, we have not just images from that telescope, but moon missions starting up again.
Oh, yeah.
The Artemis 1 launch has been rescheduled for I think it's the 14th of November, and that's the first step towards getting humans back on the moon.
They had to delay it a couple of times because of rain or hurricanes. Or there were weather problems. Yeah, I watch all the launches. I get up no matter what time it is. I'm sitting right there with my cup of coffee watching. They're so exciting, and I kind of miss them because in the old days we had much more of them. But when they stopped, I thought, well, all the other countries will get more knowledge about this. I mean, we should keep doing this. It's important. So I love the space missions. It's really nice.
That's another, but that's an example of what you've been saying, that
Absolutely.
we're now starting to see the blossoming of the potential. I mean, it seems to me that right after, so Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct in late December 2020, and then
but it was practically 21 when
in March of
20.
In March of 2021, Saturn shuts everything down in a day, pretty much on the planet.
Yeah,
and we go
on the 21st. That's when New York shut down, and I think, where are you? What city are you in?
I am outside of New York City.
Oh, you are too. So you remember how eerie it was. Aquarius does isolate. It's ruled by Uranus. Uranus is a very independent planet. He spins on his belly. He doesn't follow the other order of the other planets. He is very idiosyncratic, and yet a disruptor and highly creative, especially in the sciences. And that's, he's very strong. And he can be, difficult. I mean, like on the eclipse you were talking about, November 8th, he's a wild child. He's just wild. And that one's going to be a little hard. And that's election day. That's what we needed. A full moon eclipse, total eclipse on election day. Oh, well, it'll be emotional, but we'll get through it. We've been through things like this before. We will. But
yes.
I love looking at the future. Yeah, I mean, we're so divided, and now we have an eclipse to add to the, the cake mix. But I say to the reporters, do not take your vacation. You're going to be needed. There will be big news. Usually with an eclipse, something happens out in left field that you're not thinking about that affects you, comes right to your doorstep, something you had nothing to do with, but yet it's influencing your life. So, so there'll be something on the news, but there'll also be something in your own life, that you're thinking about. But, we just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Think back to May 15th, 16th, depending on time zone. That eclipse is kind of tied to this one. It was in Taurus, and this one, or Scorpio, that one was in Scorpio, and this one will be in Taurus. It's other opposite sign. Yeah. So but the eclipses are always on our side. Maybe you get a trusted employee leaving, and you think it's the end of the world, like, oh no, I can't fill that spot quickly, and this is really tough. And then you find out that this person really didn't like their job, and they just were doing what they had to do, but they weren't doing as much as you thought they were. So it was a good thing that the person finally said, okay, I'm going to go on to another job. And it works in your favor, even though at the time you have to remind yourself that this is working in my favor. The universe is on my side. We're going to find somebody better for this job with a better fit. So, you have to be philosophical on these eclipses. Yeah.
And that, in a weird way, kind of ties back to the nature of the changes that we're watching blossom now, because in the last couple of years, let me go back. Before Jupiter and Saturn had their conjunction, each of them had a meeting in 2020 with Pluto.
Pluto. I had never seen three planets stay crazy glued together. I mean, as if somebody just glued them. They were like little triplets flying through the sky. I mean, they weren't separating. This is almost never happens. They have very, very different orbits. And see, Jupiter, Pluto, I thought, oh, that's wonderful for prosperity and money and big deals, and money's going to flow. Well, it wasn't the way I thought it was. That was the stimulus checks that were going out. And they were huge. They were the biggest we ever had, even with inflation correction. We had never seen anything like that. And that's what I was seeing, not knowing it. And, of course, Saturn-Pluto, which happened in January earlier of 2020, that was the January conjunction of the two of them, that is the use and misuse of power. And there was lots of discussion about that. Are our leaders using their power correctly and in our interest? Because we're the ones that hire them. And it's amazing how this all gets reflected in society, but also in our own lives. I mean, all of us made big adjustments to the pandemic, huge, And for some, it was a positive change. Others, they felt lonely and sad, being away from friends, or young people who felt they'd never get married because they couldn't go out and meet people. There were different responses. Mothers had it very hard. They had to become teachers and help their children get used to remote learning, which proved to be very difficult for some kids, most kids, I think. And there's a lot of adjustment, but also a lot of enlightenment, too. Did you feel that way, like when you were home? And
Oh, well, my observation personally and from my clients, excuse me, was that people got a real streamlined look at what was most important to them. I saw massive reprioritizing going on.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think that, don't you think that currently we're watching some of the fruition of people making different choices now based on what they went through?
Career shifts, a lot of entrepreneurial expansion, because Jupiter is in Aries, a sign of the entrepreneur. And, the fire signs tend to direct their creativity in different ways. Aries into business, Leo into pure creativity and design and color and the arts, and Sagittarius and teaching and the creative way in college, to be a college professor or to learn about the world and get a grant and work in a foreign country. So each of the three were, really benefiting from Jupiter in Aries this year particularly, and he's going to come back next year too. He's just taking a little side trip to Pisces, and all the air and water and earth signs will benefit. But the end of the year is kind of different than the rest of the year. It's different than what we've had in the summer and fall. With Jupiter going back into Pisces, which is, what's exciting? They met, Jupiter and Neptune both met on April 12th, I believe, this year. And Jupiter rules Pisces in the ancient days, and then after Neptune was discovered, that was made the ruler of Pisces, but modern astrologers look at both as the ruler of Pisces, and they both were in Pisces, which made them extra strong. And this is such a beautiful aspect to encourage art and beauty, but also compassion for other people and to help and to get involved with volunteerism and anything that could help relieve suffering in others. I know that last year I began realizing I can't sit down and have a turkey dinner with my family that I cooked if I don't send a check to one of like City Harvest or Feeding America or one of those charities that help people who are hungry. You know, if we just did a little, each of us, it could change the world, you know, and this Jupiter-Neptune will never happen again in our lifetime. Now, they're not going to conjunct again, but they are going to be within 6 degrees of each other by the middle of November, early December. They're really close all the way through December. And the idea of peace and love and helping people around us, because that's what we're here for, to help each other, it's going to be very strong. And I love that. And the artistic outpouring, I think the artists will be interpreting the pandemic. You know, we were all in it, but we had to get away from it a little bit to understand how it affected us. You know, and we'll start to see the expressions in poetry, art, literature, screenplays, theater, everywhere. You know, it's going to be great.
And there could actually be quite a time delay in seeing it, because the last time that Jupiter and Neptune were conjunct in Pisces in the mid-1850s, within a couple of days of the exact conjunction, Charles Dodson adopted the pen name Lewis Carroll.
Oh, and Alice in Wonderland. And how imaginative was that?
I think it's a perfect Jupiter-Neptune
yes.
loop.
Yeah, we had to decode all the symbols, and I think it was really written for adults, but kids love it. It had many layers. Yeah.
I think he wrote it for himself personally, but at any rate, so we're seeing all this many signs in many areas already. A lot of life went online. You did talk about the way we work changing.
And we wore different clothes. We were more casual. We were home. We also ate better because we were cooking. And we began realizing all that takeout wasn't so good for our bodies. You know, sometimes an order sits there and the chef puts more butter on it or oil or something. You know what I mean? To glisten it up. I mean, I just think it's nice making your own food. I got so into cooking. It really kept me sane. You know, trying different recipes, trying different spices. And it's hard because I write all day. I mean, I'm writing all the time, either for my app or the website, Astrology Zone, or the magazines I write for. And yet that half hour of chopping and sautéing, and it just was so relaxing. And I saw myself getting better and better. I always was very interested in cooking. I had gone through the whole Julia Child cookbook when I was in my 20s, early 20s. And it was actually my daughter who got me back in. She got me a gift certificate to Blue Apron. And I started cooking, and then I just started cutting out recipes from other places, but kept up with Blue Apron. It's just fun, you know, and you start to really look at packages and not having any processed food, eating natural foods, you know, and it's better for you, and you feel better. Yeah.
And have you seen a change in attitude towards the people who actually serve you food?
Well, you see, at least here in New York, the one change I see is that, first of all, restaurants can't find people. Yeah. And also, they all built those cute little huts, which we love. We love sitting outside. We never get outside. So I love the little huts, the ones that were really made nice. Some of them have little heaters above and white tablecloths. You know, those I love. The ones that were just kind of even abandoned, the city's going to get after them.
Well, but unfortunately, we'll finish this thought in just a second. It's our final break. Hang on, everybody. Stay with us. We'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking today with Susan Miller of astrologyzone.com. And just before the break, we were talking about ways in which, we've been talking for some time about how life is now different since Jupiter and Saturn met at the beginning of Aquarius in December 2020. And right before the break, we were talking about how restaurant workers, how people are acting differently. And Susan, you were bringing up that in New York, many restaurants have actually built little outdoor dining areas with enclosures.
The problem is they spent so much money on that they were cutting corners on the salary of the chef. And I felt that almost all the restaurants in my neighborhood had gone down a notch, except for the Asian restaurants. They maintained the quality, but a lot of them did not, or some of them went out of business. So there's a real shakeout, I guess you could say, of who's going to stay and who's going to go. Yeah. You know,
I encountered a really unusual manifestation of what you've been talking about, like all of it together, in a restaurant in Dallas, Texas last month, an Argentinian restaurant that dealt with employee problems during the pandemic and customer concerns by they bought robots. It's like Rosie the robot. These little things actually roll out to your table with the food on it.
Oh, and at the airport, they give you an iPad, and you're supposed to click off your bacon and eggs if you're waiting for your plane. And I don't know. Yeah, I know. This is something we have to adjust to, because I kind of enjoyed talking to the waiter in the past, you know. That human touch was kind of nice. But then again, some of these jobs aren't very interesting, I suppose. So
I have found a lot of people being very aware of what the servers have been going through and tipping much more than they used to.
I do that with taxi cabs. You know, in New York, we run on taxi cabs. Ubers are twice as expensive, and they keep putting... You know, now, I love Uber, like if you're in Soho, that's where you never find a cab, or if it's raining or snowing or very hot. These are times when you can't find one. Or if you're in one of the outer boroughs, like Brooklyn or something, it's harder to find a cab. So Uber's really provided a service. But the problem is that they're so much more expensive, and if we don't have yellow cabs in New York, that's bad. So I really tip well. I really go out of my way. The guys are so nice, and I want to make sure that we have yellow cabs, because in L.A., I was standing on this side of the road, and I had my arm out, and somebody came up to me and said, "What are you doing? Are you trying to get a cab? We don't have any anymore. Beverly Hills Cab Company is gone. All of them are gone. You're going to have to take an Uber." And I'm like, "Oh, really? They're gone?" She said, "Yeah. They went out of business." So we can't have that. I don't know if many people know that business is based in New York. Like, I have two businesses, my digital business and my writing business, two EIN numbers. Each business contributes $2,000 each for the MTA, which is the transit system. It's the buses and trains. And every business in New York gives. And I don't mind that tax at all, because if we don't have a subway, if we don't have a bus service, we don't have a city. And how will people get to work? You know, especially if they live in Brooklyn or Queens, where it would just be prohibitive to take a taxi. So I live in Manhattan, so Manhattan's only 13 miles long and 2 miles wide, so it's tiny. So I'm lucky. I was born here. My family always lived in Manhattan. But... you know, so I don't mind that. You know, it's good to have that. And we have a good mayor now. He's very imaginative. He's trying different things. Mm-hmm. It's an impossible job. But he's a Virgo. He keeps trying.
Okay. Now you have highlighted some other areas. I mean, there are two of them I want to make sure we get to. Mm-hmm. And one of them is what's going on with money. What with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is now happening with money?
No, it's not the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. It's the eclipses in money signs, Scorpio and Taurus. I think the markets are going to rock and roll at the end of October and beginning of November, especially the beginning of November. And, a full moon is emotional to begin with, and they say that when people sell stocks, it's an emotional reaction. I just am telling everybody, A, keep your schedule clear, and B, talk to your financial advisor. I am not an astrological, financial astrologer, I should say, and I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I do believe that most people should just sit still. What goes down comes up again, and it may take a little time. But if you're scared, if you have money to invest, a lot of people are putting things in CDs, 3 months, and then they have time to see what happens, and those are very safe. So, I do think financially we're in for something with these eclipses.
But what about the concept of digital money?
Oh, the crypto.
Yes. Isn't that, now
Yeah.
doesn't that fit?
It's coming. It's coming. I have an NFT collection, and people don't know what that is. Like, why should I have art that I can't hold, and it's in the blockchain, and I don't understand? Well, it's just an image. Like Hermes has one, and Dolce & Gabbana has one, and Gucci has one. The NFL is developing one. I have 12,000, and it goes 1,000 for each sign of the zodiac, half for men and half for women. And how funny is this? In the computer age, in the Aquarian age, I should say, the computer picks your image. Now, if you don't like it, you can always sell it on OpenSea, SEA.com. But you don't, because in terms of me, the NFT acts as a passcode, like a password that gets you into private events that I give, and that I can have a closer, more intimate relationship with my readers. And and everybody meets on Discord, and Discord's different. So I had to bone up on YouTube and take beginner. There's only like 5 or 6 beginner, 5-minute videos. I mean, this is not a laborious process. It's fun, actually. And you learn, and then you ask friends, do you know Discord? Oh, yeah, that's cool. You're on it? Oh, my God. That's how they react. And it's the same excitement I'm feeling that I did in 1995 when I started Astrology Zone on Time Incorporated's website. And, the internet was so new. It was like covered wagons going to Silicon Valley. It was so exciting, So, I feel the same excitement. When you buy an image, if you have the license, you can put it on a T-shirt. You can make stationery out of it, and sell it for greeting cards. You can put it on your wall. You can make a print. You own it. So, but it's also, I said to I have like a tutor at this, and he's my business partner. I said, David, we have to get away from passwords. This is driving me crazy. And he said, eventually you'll use an NFT as your signature, as your way in, and we will get away from them because it's in the blockchain. Now, right now, they give you a code when you buy an NFT, and if you lose it, you're in trouble. But they're trying to change that, and there is research being done to see if that's not the end of the world for people. But I have safe deposit boxes. I have 2 of them at the bank, and that's where I keep my mortgage and birth certificates and things like that, and I know where everything is, and it's very organized. And that's where I keep that, So, but at least you have to have one place is safe. Could be your mom's house. It could be your mom's. Some people have vaults in their closet. Whatever it is, whatever you feel comfortable with, but have a plan. Do not leave this to chance. So. Yeah, but we are going to have cryptocurrency, and I don't like it because it takes away privacy. Every cup of coffee you buy. And, they say that millennials and Gen Zers and the other, generations, they don't expect privacy because they've never had it. And that's very sad. Because when you get audited, I've been audited 7 times, and I've never owed a penny because I'm so careful. I keep receipts. Everything is so organized. It's beautiful. I've been one in Virgo. But still, sometimes the auditor will say, why didn't you make your own coffee? Why did you go to Starbucks or Blank Coffee or wherever? And I'm like, oh, my goodness, they really get into the weeds. Well, I said, Calvin, I was rushing to an appointment that day. Oh, I remember he said, why did you go to Airline Stationery instead of going to Staples? I said, Airline Stationery was across the street from Young and Rubicon, and I had a meeting, and I had to pick up 12 legal pads and pens, and they are heavy. And so I went across the street and bought them for the meeting. And I thought, why am I having to explain this? But when you have everything digitized, I don't mind business expenses digitized, but, personal things like where you buy your groceries or if you bought a dress or something, it's nice to have some privacy. I think we're losing some of it. I do, with digital currency. Some people worry about it like me, but some people don't. I don't know. I guess I grew up with privacy, so I've always paid cash for my own things and put on credit cards for business things. So, and I still write checks. I know, I'm a dinosaur, but all my staff gets checks. Yes, I don't do Venmo. It just seems too casual for a corporation. So I wire money too, I do. But if they're in the city and they all bank at my bank, I just go in and make deposits for them, so I've had some trouble with the mail lately, so there's some difficulty with the mail. Have you been reading about it?
I've been experiencing it.
Well, no, they just caught 56 postmen in a $5 million ring of stealing the mail.
Oh, that's...
And making bogus checks in Los Angeles, but it's happening
That's lovely
here too.
To know about.
Oh, it's terrifying. I know. Especially for me, who loves stamps, loves post offices. I live right near one. It's scary, but I have to stay up to date on this stuff. But it is going on in New York because I just experienced something where my publicist didn't get her check. And we know what happened after I had grand larceny in my account. But Chase worked with me, and it all worked out, because I caught it right away. I caught it within 24 hours, thanks to having an app.
Thanks to having an app. So we're all digital. The one other topic I want to touch on really, really quickly, because we're almost at the end, is growing out of Jupiter and Saturn and the fact that their conjunctions are going to be in air. But starting with the one in Aquarius, there's a shift in where the political power base is going to be.
Well, yes, instead of patriarchal, where the king or the president tells you what to do from the top down, Aquarius is grassroots from the bottom up. And we had the death of George Floyd. During the eclipse, June 5th, I think it was the 5th or the 10th, last summer, or when he was being buried. That was his burial day, and there was an eclipse in Sagittarius. When you have an eclipse on an important event, the die is cast. Some people say, people were demonstrating, no one will remember, and it'll just go back to the way it was. No, not when there's an eclipse. You can never go backwards on an eclipse. Like if your boyfriend breaks up with you, that's sorry. The life changes, and you cannot go backwards in time. You can only go forward. So save your dignity. Don't beg him to take you back, or don't beg your boss not to lay you off with 20 other people. It's not going to happen. Eclipses are final. They're meant to push us forward. So it's good to remember that. I have a really nice essay. I must say, I worked so hard on it, and I embroidered it over the course of 2 or 3 years. It's right on my front page of my home page of my website. It's free. Go on to astrologyzone.com. Look for how to deal with eclipses. It's on the left-hand side and just below the fold, as they call it. You have to scroll just a little bit down, but it is on the home page, and that's where all my essays are. It's also on my app, Astrology Zone Horoscopes, where under life and love and how to deal with eclipses. Yeah, because they are, well, they're so big. These usually only 4 a year. Sometimes they're 6. Once there was 8. Eclipses make you conform to changing conditions. And they're very cleansing because they will bring to your attention something that has to be addressed. And it's almost like a geyser coming out of the ground. So it makes you pay attention to it. So that's why I don't want your scheduled, listeners, if it's too full, that adds stress. Just do paperwork. Don't have important meetings. Certainly don't ask your boss for a raise or anything like that. Just open the window and see what flies in. That's what I say. Sit on your couch. And it's a time
And with
to
that,
look and
I'm going to need to wrap up, unfortunately. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, Susan.
Oh.
Everyone, her website is astrologyzone.com, and her book about the year 2022 with this marvelous chapter that explains where we're all going is on Amazon Book Baby, and you can get it on Kindle. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled that you invited me. Bye-bye.